Please pray with me. Holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations in each one of our hearts be acceptable to you. O Lord, for you are our rock and you are our Redeemer. Amen. First of all, thank you. That's the way I started a sermon 10 years ago. The first of over 400 I have given as your pastor. I didn't actually count them all, I just kind of did a rough estimate. I do have an entire file drawer filled with sermons, literal file drawer. You may have noticed, if you're somebody who pays attention to the lectionary, the readings that are handed from the church for us to use, that this is not the lectionary text. That's because I went back and I reread my sermon, my first sermon to this church 10 years ago, and I thought, gosh, I'd rather preach on those themes and even steal part of that sermon for this Sunday. So I changed the gospel. I think I've earned it. First of all, thank you. On that Sunday, having been your pastor for 5 whole days, I recounted the ways that you had already welcomed me. You put up a welcome banner. You'd given me many invitations to your homes. You'd taken me to restaurants. You'd given me a prayer shawl. You'd given me a chocolate bar, and then another one. I thanked you, and then I said, I hope the welcome hasn't only been one way. I am dedicated to welcoming you into my life, to learning your names and your gifts, your history and your dreams. We are in a time of mutual welcome. I'm really aware as I stand here today of how different this church is than it was 10 years ago. I want you to stand up if you were here then. I want you to stand up if you were part of the church then, just not physically here that day. So this is remarkable to look around and notice how many people are new, right, in the last 10 years. Sit back down, you can sit down. Little did I know how much the theme of welcome would become a hallmark of Peace's ministry over the decade that followed. A year after I started, we realized we had to work on our congregational values because this church's commitment to welcoming people of a variety of sexualities and gender identities had been threatened, and we needed to figure out who we are before we could move forward together. Eventually, we crafted values, 6 of them, that clarified our congregational identity, and one of those values was rooted in welcome. We said then, and we still say, we believe all people are loved and worthy of love. All are welcome in God's kingdom. Welcome. Welcome is a deceptively simple concept. It's put on doormats as if all you have to do is say to somebody, oh, here's the entry, and they will feel welcome. Welcome is much more a verb, welcomed, welcoming, than just a word, welcome. It's hard to welcome every person when life is full, right? It's hard to know what to do when you pass by somebody and you know they could use a friend or a meal and you just don't have the time or energy. I think we spend a lot of our days realizing we can't welcome anything else or anyone else, for our lives are already so busy and so full. And yet welcome is at the heart not only of our church's ministry, but of Jesus' life and the gospel itself. We have an incredible group of new members today. And it's unrealistic that each of them will be equally welcomed by every member of the church. But that's why a whole church exists. It's not just up to one person to welcome. It's the work of the whole church. And it's not only done through interpersonal relationships, it's also done through creating the organizations and the structures so that people can get involved and find ways to plug in. Wear a name tag. That's one way we welcome people. I think I forgot the 3 that I have at home, so grace abounds. We do have some in the fellowship hall. One of the things I did the first Sunday that I was here was I asked people to pair and share to talk to somebody that you didn't know and to answer 3 questions. We're not going to do it today, but you could do it in the fellowship hall if you want. I asked people to say, what is your name? What was on your mind as you came to church this morning? And is there anything I can pray for you? When we did it on that day 10 years ago, my new boyfriend, who came to church to support me, we'd only been dating a month, sat next to this woman. She's kind of an introvert and hard to get to know, Sue Clark. The relationship worked out between them and between us. And you welcomed him as my husband 9 years ago, and you welcomed these 2 other little creatures who came along. And you welcomed us not only in word, but by giving us family leave when we needed it, and by giving us health insurance. Welcome is not just an interpersonal event. It is the creation of systems that support people's well-being. Thank you for that welcome on behalf of me and my family. Thank you. This church's hallmark, this church has the hallmark of welcome. And the concept of welcome extends out from this congregation into the ministry we do as church for the world. It is impossible to know that you are welcome in the world when you are hungry or hurting, when you have been made to feel terribly unwelcome by an unfriendly world. That's why Peace's social ministries keep growing and keep pushing us to learn new things about our neighbors and to change ourselves, to challenge ourselves in the name of a Christ-like welcome. We welcomed Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Services into our building a year ago. And we did so not only by making the office space available, but by realizing that people are people, and sometimes they make messes, and it's hard to have a roommate, and to work it out. I don't know how many times I called the quilting ministry on a Wednesday and I said, do you mind if someone else is in your space tomorrow? They need it for an asylum workshop or an intake. And you changed yourselves and created some discomfort for yourselves by saying yes. This, of course, is part of welcome. Welcome also extends out to the kind of positions that we take about who is welcome not only in the church, but in the society. We know that not all people in this world truly know that they are welcome in all communities in this world. This is why we as a church not only work on gender justice, but also on racial justice, because we know that the world and the church and ourselves have not been as welcoming to all sorts of different kinds of people. And we know that that is not a reflection of God's kingdom. And so we work on welcome. It is easy, it is very easy right now to shake our head at some of the ways people in our wider society are not being welcomed or are being flown to other places hoping they might get a welcome there. It is another thing entirely to realize that, in fact, we too have places in our own lives where we need to work on welcoming other people. Sometimes it's our own neighbors that are hard to welcome. Sometimes it's our own family members. I sometimes think the hardest people to welcome are the people you live with. The hardest people to welcome sometimes are the people you live with. And then there is that deep and beautiful welcome that each of us craves and each of us receives. Jesus says, whoever welcomes one such child welcomes me. He's not just setting forth an agenda for future Christian communities to say, you should fund your children's ministry. Although, thank God we did, right? I mean that literally. This church put money. Do you know you funded a nursery for 2 years that didn't have a child in it? You said this is important, and you knew it was important not for ourselves, but for the witness of the gospel. And here we are. But each of us craves to be welcomed in that way where we can bring our whole selves, our full selves, the parts that we don't like to show, the parts that we ourselves don't know, the parts of ourselves that we just need someone to love. We bring that here before God and find that, in fact, it is God's welcome that enables us to do anything like a welcome ministry. Jesus welcomes the child, and he welcomes even those disciples, the very ones who, did you catch this in the gospel? While Jesus is telling them he's going to be killed, are arguing about which one is better. Right? Like, if you're Jesus, wouldn't you think, maybe I need some new disciples at this point? He even welcomes them with all of their misunderstandings. He sits around and he tries to show them, you don't need to be great. You don't need to be anything. God welcomes you. I welcome you. And so you can welcome others. I think this is a basic human need, a basic human hunger that maybe we don't all admit all the time. I was just yesterday, some of you know I play Ultimate Frisbee sometimes, and I just yesterday joined a new team. My old team merged with another team, so I only knew about 3 people on it. And I have to say, I showed up among this group of people, and I wanted them to welcome me. I wanted somebody to say, oh, hey, who are you? And nobody did, because they all had friends already, and because I'm about 20 years older than any of them. And so I had to be the one, right, to say, okay, I guess I'm the welcoming committee for myself here. Made it happen. I share that story because I don't think I'm unique in knowing as I go about the day that what I want, maybe more than anything, is to be seen and known, to be welcomed and admitted into somebody's life with absolute grace. We can only do that for each other because we are welcomed that way by God. And the best place, the best people, the best way to know that you are welcomed by God, I think, is to be a part of a church like Peace Lutheran Church, maybe actually Peace Lutheran Church, to come here and hear the words of grace, to understand that you have been forgiven, to taste the meal of hospitality, to shake hands with people who know you or who don't know you, and yet say, I'm so glad you're here. It has been 10 years. It has been 10 good years, 10 hard years. I started to add up all the things, all the baptisms, all the funerals. That was too hard. Instead, I got back to that first sermon, and I will end my sermon today the way I ended that sermon then. Thank you. You welcomed me, and I hope you feel as if I welcomed you. And the welcome for both of us isn't over. The welcome continues as we let God work through us and let ourselves be changed by one another. One thing I already love about Peace is that the welcome you gave me is a welcome we can count on extending to each person. It's a welcome that says, come, whoever you are, like a child, not deserving anything. Come with your questions and your faith, with your strengths and your weaknesses, your sorrows and your joys. Come with your awkwardness too. Come and find welcome with God. And let all God's people say, amen.